Call the meeting to order. I want to welcome everybody here. I'd like to call on Councillor Funk to bring the opening, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Sunday, we all started to observe the season of Advent. And so tonight I just want to talk a little bit about Advent. We're entering a unique season, a time where reflection, adoration, and celebration is entrenched in our lives both spiritually and culturally. It is a time for gathering, for communing, expressions of love that flow freely and are deeply rooted in traditions. Advent itself means anticipation. The definition is coming, arrival, or beginning. We are awaiting the arrival of our Savior, the beginning of a new covenant with our living God. For years, God's people watched and waited for God's plan of salvation to play out. And in the weeks of Advent season, we get to repeatedly give thanks to our God and praise Him for His wondrous plan as we honor Him and watch His glory unfold with great anticipation. Advent is celebrated and represented by a wreath and 5 candles. The wreath symbolizes God and His love that has no beginning and no end. The first candle is the candle of hope. As we look at this candle, we celebrate the hope we have in Jesus. The second candle is the candle of peace. As we look at this candle, we celebrate the peace we find in Jesus Christ. The third candle is the candle of love. As we look at the light from this candle, we celebrate the love that we have in Jesus Christ. The fourth candle is the candle of joy. As we look at this candle, we celebrate the joy we find in Jesus. The fifth candle, the most important candle, represents the birth of Christ. The flame from this candle reminds us that He is the light of the world, and that if we follow Him, we will not walk in darkness, but we will walk in His light. As we look forward to Christmas this year, I invite all of you to join with me in quiet reflection and meditation of all the wonderful gifts that God has given us, especially the gift of salvation. Thank you.
All right, Council, we have the agenda in front of us. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Siemens. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have no business arising from the minutes. Other than thank you for waiting to the last moment of the last meeting to excuse me from that meeting.
We weren't quite sure.
Normally it's done at the beginning, but you decided to leave it to the end. But
we wanted to keep you in suspense.
Good. We have no public hearings today, and no delegations specifically have been requested. And so we will move to 8A, and that's the reports and recommendations of the city manager, and this is on page 4. Council, there was some discussion 2 weeks ago in regards to the portable sign or the mobile sign bylaw, or the zoning bylaw, which requires mobile or regulates mobile signs. We do have a report that we have here. We have a number of pages of correspondence with varying views, and I'm wondering what Council would like to do with this. Councillor Spexter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion, and I'll read the motion and then wait for a seconder.
Thank you.
Be it resolved that City Council initiate the following amendments to Bylaw 2055. 1. Permits for mobile signs shall be extended from 30 days to 365 days. 2. Mobile signs shall be allowed to operate continuously in the same location, provided the owner has acquired a permit from the city. And 3, or other amendments as may be recommended. I so move.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Funk, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's always a challenge when balancing the right of business to be able to advertise their services and let people know about what is available, with the need to ensure aesthetics in the city, public safety in terms of visibility issues, and we need to make sure that we have this balance thought out properly. We've had quite a few emails and letters of concern and conversations from people who have small businesses that are concerned about the restrictive nature of the current zoning bylaw. And specifically, the current zoning bylaw requires that a mobile sign can only be in place for 30 days at a time, and then it has to come down for 30 days. And then the maximum length of time it can be in place is 90 days out of the entire year. That is a major concern because a lot of businesses over the last while have had their signs up for a much longer period of time because, especially when you're a small business and you're starting out, you want to be able to advertise in the most affordable way possible. Looking into what other cities do, for example, Winnipeg and Winkler, both those cities have considerably looser restrictions in terms of the issue of the length of the permit and any requirement to remove signs. So in Winnipeg, for example, it's 90 days for a permit and there's no requirement for a 30-day period of time where the mobile sign is removed. Winkler is even more flexible, where you can have a permit for a year, and it's an annual fee, and then you simply get to continue with the sign if you so choose. And so what this amendment seeks to do is to change the bylaw to make it more flexible in regards to mobile signs. I don't think there's anything unreasonable about a business, particularly when we're talking in many cases about their own property, being able to put up a sign to let people know about what services and products are available. We have many of these signs in Steinbach currently. It doesn't bother me to have these signs because it provides information. And I don't think there's any need to have a requirement saying that the sign has to come down for a month before it can go back up. If a business wants to continue advertising, I think it should be able to do so. I think that is more than appropriate. It should be noted that the resolution here also states other amendments as may be recommended. That's to allow administration and council the flexibility that if there are other things that are identified, that can be incorporated in terms of wording changes and all that, just so that we keep the process moving in the proper way. Because there is a bit of a process involved in amending a zoning bylaw because there's 3 readings involved in all that. And according to the zoning bylaw, what we need to do first is we need to have an initiating resolution, which is exactly what this is intended to do. It should be noted that this change does not remove the fact that a permit will be required for mobile signs. It is important as a city that we do have some regulations because we need to make sure that signs are of an appropriate size, that they're in the proper location. So that is why an annual permit will be required. That is something that is standard in other cities. So when looking at what other cities do, this is a pretty common thing to require a permit. The intent is not to take in a huge amount of revenue from these permits. The intent is just to make sure that we have some quality control and we make sure that signs are placed where they're supposed to be. And the permitting process is the way that we're able to do that. At the same time, we do not want the permitting process to be onerous. We think that it should be simple for businesses to advertise their services and their products. And I will say that as a member of council, speaking totally for myself, I acknowledge I should have read more carefully the zoning bylaw, because if I had thought this through more and if I read that more carefully and if I'd had more discussion on that, I would have been inclined, certainly would have thought that I would have put these changes in sooner, and I think others might feel the same way. That is entirely my responsibility as a member of council to make sure that I keep myself informed in terms of the things that we pass. And so I just want to make sure that that is acknowledged and made clear as well. We want to be business friendly in our city. We want businesses to be able to advertise, and we want to make sure that we have an aesthetically pleasing, safe city. I think these amendments that would strike the appropriate balance, and so that's why I think we should move forward to this initiating resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Fung.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have that much to add. Councillor Swaster has done a very good job of speaking to this. But I've also had a lot of people come and talk to me, business owners and non-business owners alike. The common tone was that flexibility. The previous, or the bylaw enforced now, is not very flexible. Does not allow for a lot of advertising that might be needed for some of the businesses. Some of them are not on the main drag. They're a little bit further off, and they need the sign to draw people to them because they're just a small door at the corner of a building. And so some of these signs are required. The cutting of red tape, I like that idea, that it makes it more business friendly. And the rest I'll just leave with what Councillor Swager said. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion from Council? Councillor Penner.
Yes, I have some issues with the proposal as stated by Councillor Swagstra. I think this issue was one that was done, the policy was set very carefully, and there were consultations and there was public input from business owners, and there was all of these things, how then do we think we can quickly revise this policy with no further formal consultations or thoughtful research into what other communities do? I did some research into what the top 10 most beautiful small cities in Canada do, and they are more restrictive with their portable sign bylaws. And as a matter of fact, the other word for portable sign bylaw is temporary sign bylaw. So we're forgetting that this is supposed to be a temporary sign. It's not supposed to be a permanent sign. And I think we're starting to confuse that. So I really feel this is premature. It needs more study and it needs more attention paid. We don't need to get it wrong. There's no need to rush. And I would rather see it done properly. Councillor Swagstra also talked about control. How do we have control of the temporary signs or the portable signs if they're only issued a permit for the entire year? Then we have no control. We need to have, at the very least, twice a year, I think, rather than once. Aesthetically as well, I understand the need for these signs. I myself read them and enjoy what they tell me, so I understand, but I still think we have to be careful that we do this right. Not just for the business owners, but also for the city itself, for the citizens of the city.
Thank you. Further discussion. Councillor Siemens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some concerns. I think that we're reacting to a situation where the one thing that council's learned over the last while is that we need to seek feedback from the general public and from our business community on various issues. And I do have a couple of concerns with this, the way it is written, is that to move it from 30 days to 365 days, the sign that's in the same place for 365 days is a permanent sign. And so we need to address that issue. I don't have an answer to that issue, but we need to address that. We have enforcement issues. One of the things I think that we had as a city, one of the biggest problems was enforcing the bylaws that we put in place. And that's evident when you don't enforce the permits that are there. So I think we need to take a step back now. We have time. This isn't a situation that we need to make a decision today. We have time. We can seek more feedback. And I think that's one area that we really need to concentrate on, again, is to take a step back and review with the all the different players, what is the correct situation? How do we move forward with this so that everybody has input into the discussions? And I think that would be critical.
Thank you. Further discussion. Councillor Fair.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a couple of things here. Most businesses generally have a sign that lets people know where their business is. That's your primary sign. And then they have an additional sign that will let people know something specific. It might be a new product. It might be a special that they want to offer. And so I get why people want to have a different kind of a sign. And I applaud that. I don't have a big issue with the current sign providers in the city. They've cleaned up the signs a lot. If you look back 10 years ago, I remember there was some signs that looked horrible. I wouldn't have wanted it on my yard. But I think the sign providers, however, we can't build bylaws around sign providers that are currently in place. If somebody decides to start a sign business tomorrow and he doesn't have the same standards, they would be held by the same standards as what we have for these gentlemen or these businesses. So however, I do like the other amendments as may be recommended, portion of this motion. There's no question that this bylaw needs to be changed. I kind of agree that it's a kind of a reactionary thing, but I think that maybe with the other amendments, as may be recommended, I could support this motion, giving us a little bit of latitude to change some of the other portions of the bylaw that may need to be addressed as well.
Thank you. Further discussion? Nothing further? Anything closing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the comments around the table, and just want to comment on a few things that have been raised. The concern has been raised about that that this has been too quick in terms of revising. I just want to point out that when we're to even initiate a process, there is still going to be the first reading, because this has to be drafted into the bylaw, and then there has to be second reading, and at the second reading we have to have a public hearing, and then of course we have third reading after that, and so. I don't think there's a problem with setting a direction that we're going to be more flexible, and because there will be that public hearing that comes up, because we have to have one in order to change our zoning bylaw. In terms of the issue of cities being more restrictive and less restrictive, I don't doubt that there are some cities that have more restrictive bylaws, but I would suggest that some of our neighboring cities, and again I mentioned Winkler and Winnipeg in particular, have less restrictive. And again, Winkler is a city that's pretty similar to us, and they function just fine, having annual permits. The last time I checked in Winkler, they're not overthrown with mobile signs. I mean, the city continues to function just fine, and I think that we will continue to function just fine, because frankly what would happen is that many of the signs we currently have would just continue being there, and I think life would continue. In regards to the issue of control, I understand that there is a concern about we need to make sure that we control signs and making sure that they're the proper quality and size and that sort of thing. But my response to that question is that we would do that through the annual permit. We issue a lot of permits on an annual basis. I mean, for example, business licenses. We do that annually. We don't ask businesses to check in with us every 3 months or every 6 months. We just simply annually have a registration of those home-based businesses. And that's fine, and that works just well. And so I think we would have adequate control. I should note, there's nothing in here which is taking away any of the regulations in regards to the size and the placement and those sorts of issues. This is just simply saying that if a business, on their own property in most cases, simply want to put up a sign advertising their products, that they should be able to do so. And I think it's reasonable that we allow that. In terms of the issue of feedback, we've gotten lots of feedback. We have that in our council packages, we've had it in our conversations. Frankly, we got more feedback on this than we do on 99% of the issues we have coming before us already. And so I think we've had a substantial amount of feedback. And there could be more. That is why there is the open-ended aspect in here, that if there are other amendments as may be recommended, if council and staff, if there is something else, that can still be incorporated. But if we don't pass this now, that simply means that nothing happens, and we have to wait before we can even initiate something. So I think it's important that we initiate this to send the message that businesses are able to advertise their products on a sign and can do so on a continuous basis as long as they get their annual permit. So I still think this is a good resolution.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for the discussion. Obviously, we're trying to find a balance here, and you can hear that with the varying degrees of support and the varying degrees of thought of how long mobile signs should be out and the like. I think it's important to find that balance. We want to balance not only safety for pedestrians, for vehicles, but we also want to find balance that allows businesses to advertise what they're providing to the community on their own property. We also are looking for balance when it comes to cost and affordability and the encumbrances that come about with administering something like this. And so that brings us to the point where now we're looking very clearly at how long should mobile signs be allowed. And so when it comes down to exactly what is being proposed here by Councillor Swagstra and Councillor Funk, it says clearly that what we want to see is businesses able to provide signage on their properties about their own businesses on a yearly basis. That's being clear. What it doesn't do is it doesn't open it up to any signage on public right-of-ways. And so that does create some balance between what is going on business properties and public space, and which allows some safety concerns to be alleviated. Whether it's 365 days, 180 days, those are probably good discussions to have. At the same time, this is what's in front of us right now. This will initiate some further discussion as we move forward, if this is passed. And that brings us to the consultation aspect. We actually have an offer from the Chamber of Commerce to look into consultation, being involved in some of these discussions. What would be best for business, finding that balance. And I think that's a great offer, and I think there's merit in us possibly taking them up on that offer. The other aspect is that we also have an administration that has to administer this, and so for us to not have them comment on this specifically, I think would be an error. And so what I expect to do is that if this does pass today, that in our SPC next week we'll have further comments from them, further comments from consultants who actually created the zoning bylaw, so that we can have clear information as we look at the possibility of changing this and making this, finding that balance. So with that, I'm prepared to support this resolution with the proviso that we will continue consultation, we'll continue to have a discussion at our Strategic Priority Committee meeting. Open to, it says there very clearly, amendments, we're open to further amendments if they're recommended, and we'll have those discussions. So that'll be an appropriate place for us to have those discussions, and I'm comfortable with that. So I'm comfortable with moving forward with this. This states clearly that we want to see a balance and that we want to see a different balance than what's there, but it does leave it open to further discussion at our SPC meeting. And but this sets the general direction. So call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. Council, there will be further information, and we'll have a draft change to the bylaw provided to us next week by administration, and we'll move from there and have our discussions. But this does send the general direction. Set the general direction. All right. We'll move to 9A, accounts payable in the back of the book. And I have a motion for the accounts payable. Councillor Funk, second by Councillor Penner. Discussion. Further discussion from council. Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have 9B, the financial statement ending October 31st. Can I have a motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Penner. Second by Councillor Funk. Any discussion on October 31st financial statement? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor? We have 9C, the 2016 regular council meeting dates on page 59. Council, you have all had a chance to look at these. Mr. Workington, do we need a resolution to accept these, or are these just on the official record?
I believe those are just for council's information, and so they are part of the public record.
All right, thank you. Also, in this regular council meeting, we will be looking at our firming up the study session in summer. Early in July, we will determine that through consultation with you and what works best. We have the business licenses on page 60. There's a motion. Can I have a resolution to accept them, please? Councillor Seaman, second by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have the interim operating budget on page 61. Mr. Workington, do you want to just brief us on this, please?
This document, or this page as presented on page 61 in your agenda package, requirement in the Municipal Act requires that municipality adopt an interim operating budget for each year to cover the period from the beginning of the year, January 1st, to such time as City Council adopts its annual financial plan for the year. The proposed budget in the general department areas, as indicated, is being recommended for Council's approval.
Thank you. How would Council like to proceed? Councillor Swagstra?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Further discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. We have the 9F RBC Borrowing Bylaw on page 62. It's fairly lengthy. Whoever moves it gets to read it all. Councillor Farrow, you move this borrowing bylaw, please?
Yep.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? No. Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Any questions of council?
Number four has to be done yet.
Sorry, I'm,
Said number 4, we didn't approve the minutes from the last meeting.
did I miss approving the minutes? Oh, I get the nod from the back. Yeah, I missed one meeting, and I, thank you, Councillor Fair. Trying to save face, and I just don't get it. That's good.
I'll move that.
Thank you. Move the minutes. Second by Councillor Swagstra. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none?
I'll just, Mr. Mayor, I'll just apologize for leaving your excusal till the end of the meeting.
It's all good. I was so preoccupied with that, I forgot to even have it.
Yeah, right, when you wouldn't let us.
Yeah. Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move to correspondence, 11A, in regards to, there's actually, Council, we have 11A, 11B, 11C, 11D, and 11E. All of these are grant requests, one from the Chamber of Commerce, one from the Epp Library, one from the Eastman Safety Training Center, and the Mennonite Heritage Village, as well as the Pat Porter Center. Council, you do know and that we have the core grant policy. That core grant policy sets some specific parameters in regards to the Chamber of Commerce, Arts Council, Epp Library, Mennonite Heritage Village, Summer in the City, and Community Development Corporation. So if you exclude those out of there, we have two remainders that are in that correspondence. One is Eastman Safety Training Center, and one is the Pat Porter Active Living Center. Council, how would you like to proceed, and how would you like to deal with these? Take them as information?
Yeah, I think our core grants policy applies, so if they don't fall within the core.
Take it as information, and then, thank you. No one would like to pull any of those out? Seeing none? Then we'll move to various letters. 11F this is on page 158. Sorry, 161 and 162 and 163. Any action taken by council?
May I ask a question to administration?
Sure. Councillor Penner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To administration, regarding the Sunday shopping situation, I guess, can you just help clarify that for me? My understanding is the city does not have a bylaw regarding Sunday shopping, so it defaults to the provincial, what the province has in place. Or could you explain that to me? I've heard
Yes,
comments in the past month. So.
that's correct. There is the opportunity for municipalities to enact a Sunday shopping bylaw if they so choose. The overall document that governs Sunday and holiday shopping within the province is a piece of provincial legislation that applies across the province. And if municipalities so choose and they enact a bylaw to enable the shopping to proceed, they may do so. At this point, the City of Steinbach has not enacted such a bylaw.
Do other municipalities in general enact one specifically for themselves, or do you believe most municipalities just default to the provincial?
That I'm not aware of the number across the province that that have enacted such a bylaw. That I would have to do some research. There is a number of municipalities that do have them, but I don't have an accurate number on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Take this as information. Thank you, Council. We have 11G, the Minister of Tourism, Culture, Heritage and Sport, in regards to Rural Library Technology Sustainable Grant. We received some dollars for the Epp Library. Take this information. Councillor Penner, anything on that at all? Thank you. There's no other business, so we'll move to adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Funk. All those in favor?